Happy to see Sacramento hasn't floated away, but we're all somewhat, some transplanted to the U.S. and some of us from Vancouver, BC, so we know rain. Oh, we're not afraid of nothing. Throw it at us, Sacramento. We know rain.
So how was the trip coming over here? I mean, did you guys end up like key flying over or anything?
No, it was great. It's only a 2-hour flight from Vancouver, surprisingly, and it was smooth sailing. I did a show the morning before I came, and there was an LA director online who was like, "Oh yeah, it's be careful, it's crazy in Sacramento. You're going to be coming in sideways." I'm like, not what you want to hear before you get on a plane, but it was perfect. It was a fine flight in. I don't know about going home, but it was all good.
So, like, what was your favorite scene to voice from the original Dragon Ball Ocean dub?
Wow! Right off the top.
That's like picking a
30
child.
years ago.
Well, when we did, it's Hey, there's Brad Swaile. We can introduce him now.
Brad Swaile, everyone.
Jeez, is that gray hair?
Yeah, he had to find the Coke machine. There's only one in the entire state. No.
Sorry, I haven't seen Brad Swaile since X-Men Evolution. Dude.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, look, it's an
a
impromptu
Vancouver reunion.
It is. We haven't recorded with each other, or then some folks live in the States, some of us are still in Vancouver, so even myself, I hadn't seen Brad in probably 3 years, and so we did a con a couple of months ago, so it's weird. It's like a reunion, and you're forced to sit 12 inches from the person you haven't seen for
Because
3 years.
Brad was a kid and we were doing X-Men Evolution. He was a kid, his long hair. It's, you come in and it's like, his hair.
I was
the flow.
I was devil may care back then.
Yeah.
and now I'm achy joints and dodgy knees.
Don't tell me about it.
It's not the years, it's the mileage, right?
Yeah.
So this was an exercise in avoiding your question.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I have one recollection with Gohan. I don't know the exact scene, but it's kind of when he transformed, when he found his strength, when he went from being so shy and he was a really kind, peaceful boy. And then through what happened to his dad and he wasn't there for his family, he didn't have the strength. And through being so fearful, but he got so much rage and he transformed that into his courage. And he became the great fighter that he was. So that was kind of a fun part for me, seeing the transition.
I think chasing down Gohan, wanting to strip the flesh from his bones as a child was my favorite scene as Vegeta. You won't escape my wrath, when he hides the Dragon Ball from him and I have to chase, I'm coming after him. Everyone was afraid for his life because Vegeta would have torn him limb from limb if he got an opportunity. But that's a great scene, and it was not fun to do because that's all we do is we screamed on that show. I will be honest with everyone here. There's probably not too many actors that were happy when they found out you've got a session on Dragon Ball Z because we knew it was going to be throat trashing and painful.
I was pretty happy.
8 hours.
So for me, it was a bit different because the show was already airing and becoming super popular, and I had some younger cousins that were right into it and all that. And then I got an audition for Dragon Ball Z, and I was like, "What? Nice for who? Gohan? What? Nice." So I showed up as a total dork with posters to get the cast to sign. I think I have all your signatures on a poster still somewhere.
That's what we were doing.
And for me, as far as scenes go, Super Boo fighting Gohan was probably one of my favorites because it's when Gohan, was officially badass at that point. Fight you, huh? I will destroy you.
Hey.
The end.
There's some answers. No. Thank you.
Is with all the new modern Dragon Ball stuff and even like the new movie, how do y'all feel about like the new Dragon Ball stuff, like Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Broly, Dragon Ball Dragon Ball Superhero?
It's a fabulous series. I get asked this quite a bit. Like when the show moved from being done in Vancouver at Ocean Studios, it was kind of a surprise to those of us that were still working on it at the time. But most things are made for financial reasons. The producer was from Texas and decided to move the show back down to Texas. It was going to be easier and had our voices voice matched by the current cast. They've since changed them over time to sort of their own vibe. Chris Abbott has got his own vibe for Vegeta, which is different than what he started with. But yeah, that was upsetting when it first moved. But then we actually continued and did the rest of Dragon Ball Z for Canadian television and the UK UK and Ireland, so a lot of other areas saw that show. But the new stuff is fabulous. I'm most amazed by is that the show still has legs. This many years later, from when it was my first anime that I was ever cast in the end of 1994 or early 95 when I first got that
Me too, it was
role.
my first.
So a really long time ago, and it is still going strong, not just on TV, but in theaters, in manga, and it's great. You know, I have a ton of friends that are in the current cast. Chris Sabat had me back to do a small role in Dragon Ball Super. Some people probably saw me play Copy Vegeta in Dragon Ball Super for a couple of episodes, which was fun. And they're just a great bunch of people, and we would have been loved to probably keep the parts that we had, but that's the business. Things move around, and sometimes you're not always playing the same guy. I'm currently playing Eggman in Sonic Prime, and that's a role that another actor's had for quite a few years, and might go right back to him after this series is done. So
Isn't he dead?
No.
Oh, I thought it was Long
Absolutely.
John.
No, that was a long time.
Absolutely loved you as Eggman in Sonic Prime, by the way.
Wondering, how did the industry of voice acting change since Dragon Ball began its dub, and was it for the better?
Well, I can sort of talk about when I started. I think Dragon Ball was my first foray into. I did a lot of commercials. I did singing, jingles, and all that kind of stuff. But I hadn't done any voice acting. So when I got into it, I find in general, because I'm kind of the queen of the boy voices, I just got that thing. They used to be more cartoony when I first started.
Like a boy was like really, he was all over the place. Oh my gosh, guys,
and then it became very real. So real that they actually started only casting real boys, real 10-year-olds to do what I was doing. And that was a horrible thing for me, obviously, because I didn't get the work. And you know what? Boys' voices change. So people that were hiring these young kids, if the series went more than 1 year, they could go from talking up here to talking down here, So, but back to the question, I found that you had to go a lot more real.
So the boy was like really more real. He wasn't like all over the place. He actually sounded like a boy, right?
So that really changed over the year, and you have to adapt. I mean, if you're an actor, that's what you do. It's never going to stay the same. Like we talked about, financial reasons. People will say, well, why did you leave Lego Ninjago? It's like, dude, I did not leave Lego Ninjago. He grew up. My guy was 10, then Lloyd was 14. I dropped my voice, and then he became a man. So,
What?
yeah, it happened.
I don't understand.
Overnight.
Why couldn't you do
voice.
that?
I don't know. I didn't play the man, no. But it changes in that way. For me, that's changed a lot, just how it got more realistic. But then having said that, then they dropped having young kids in and actually went back to us, the women who could voice boy voices, because our voices don't change.
The writing
Until we're
changed a lot.
really old, and then they do.
One thing that's definitely changed quite a bit on more of the consumption side of it is like the very first anime anything that I worked on was a show called Ranma 1/2. And oh yeah, nice, some Ranma. Oh, wonderful. And when we recorded that and it was released, if you wanted to get Ranma, you had to, I think, send a check in the mail, and then they would give you a video cassette. There was this thing. It was a clunky thing, and you put it in the player, and it'd play on your TV. And you'd have to pay like 50,
They were too young.
Like it was like $50 for one tape that had 2 episodes on it.
50 for shipping.
Yeah, exactly. No, shipping was probably cheap back then. I don't know. Hard to say. But that was how people found these shows that they loved. And then I imagine it was a lot of word of mouth because the internet kind of sucked back then. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how things grew. And very differently now, it's so much easier to locate these series that you want to get into, and a lot easier for people to talk about shows that they're interested in also, and kind of pass that along to their friends or people across the planet. And now you have all these streaming platforms that you can find it. So it's a lot easier to consume than it was when we were working on these shows back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Then it was also, the forced us into our home studios. Ian, you and I have had studios since way before that. But you could never do anime. You had to go into Ocean. You had to go in. When I used to live in Vancouver, we all went in. It was fun to go in, and I used to love, screaming, get a raccoon. I used to go and scream and laugh and talk to Carl Willems, and we'd have a great time. And then that all went away. when they redid some of the. I don't do a lot of anime anymore, but brought Inuyasha back, Yashahime, and they. I went home and I could hear the director in my headphone. I could see the video. Everything was. It was, oh my God, this is kind of cool. The technology didn't exist back then.
Yeah, when we first started doing Dragon Ball, they were still using tape machines to queue up, because you're recording the dialogue afterwards. So there was all this time and, okay, let's do that line again. Beep, 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 line. Let's do it again. And now it's like instant.
Yeah.
And then what David was just talking about with the current technology for dubbing, it was impossible to do that remotely, and now you can. And it is, I'm a little antisocial, so I kind of like it. Just sit in my little room.
A little.
I'm back in my closet. I came out of the closet for a while, but now this house, I'm back in the closet.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you guys prefer watching just either Dragon Ball or just in general animes and sub or dub?
Oh, good question. And it's funny because doing dubbing anime for a living, I can hardly watch anything dubbed. Live action, TV shows, there's so many great things on Netflix that are international series. I can't watch them dubbed. As soon as the dub starts, I'm like, whoa, I got to go into settings. I find I want to hear the original performers. So that's something and I know it's a little different with anime because they actually kind of do dub it. They don't record it and then do it, like Ryo Horikawa still did it to picture, but so it's kind of dubbed, in the same way. But I always like to see the original performances, and I can't stand watching my own performances. I always think I could do that so much better.
I disagree with that. All I watch is stuff that I'm in.
Nothing else.
24/7.
I've rarely seen anything that I've done. I'm weird like that. Even after so many years in the business, I find it difficult to take a look at it. And to answer your question too, when I watched the Squid Game, we put on the English dub. Went, oh God, no. And so like Brian said, I love hearing the original inflection in the acting, and reading it I quite enjoy that. So it's a weird thing because we do dubs.
Yeah. Talking ourselves out of work up here.
Yeah.
No doubt, guys.
Show of hands. Who prefers the original dub and to the English dub? Original.
So
original,
dubs, and then who's subtitled? Who just like subtitled? Oh, it's a little bit of each in there.
Bit of each.
But to Brian's point, I think it makes a difference whether it's animated or live action.
Yeah.
Because animation, especially the Japanese stuff, it's like the mouths don't even match the Japanese. So it's a little less critical than watching a live action thing and hearing some guy with a North American accent trying to fit
a Korean actor.
I'm just I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's not really
a different ball of wax.
It's not necessarily a fair question with anime too, because anime has Japanese, which is just the coolest language there is. So it's hard to compete with us speaking English, and they're using Japanese, which is just much cooler sounding.
That's fair.
So that's tough.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right.
What qualities do you share with Vegeta?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm not the biggest guy, so I could say I'm somewhat diminutive in stature. I'm not a huge human being, so he's smaller. I'm not very princely, so not that. I'm not, the ego, maybe, would you say? I love, and I think probably so many people up here do love playing villains because he's very different than me, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to play the villain and the anti-hero, and because it's just so different than just me and my dad with my kids at home life, right? It's so much different. So I wouldn't say I share a lot of qualities with him. I would say pride in what I do is probably the quality I would share with him the most, and he's very prideful as far as being a Saiyan is concerned. And I'm a pretty proud Canadian and pretty proud performer, so. That's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you guys first started dubbing anime in the early 90s, what was...
Whoa, mid-90s.
Oh, man, sorry. I was born 92, so my time...
Well, some of us were early 90s.
So, yeah, some of us were early 90s.
So, what was your initial impressions when you first got into the anime industry? Because I know at the time, even for people who got into it, it was very niche, or they weren't sure how to feel about it.
It was a very jarring look. For those of us who were raised on Looney Tunes and Disney, and Hanna-Barbera. I mean, actually, there's a great progression. You've got Disney that's just like this flowing, beautiful artwork in their features. Then you've got Looney Tunes that were a little more rudimentary and concentrated on comedy. Then you got Hanna-Barbera, which is even cheaper and more limited, kind of blocky. And then fast forward, and you get this other look that's completely minimal in some ways, not a lot of movement. And for a lot of us, well, I mean, speaking for myself, I was just, huh? Yeah. What is that? That's not even moving. It's like the background's moving, but they're not. Yeah. And so I was like old school animation fan. So I'll be completely honest with you, which is a really terrible thing to do at an anime convention. But I just didn't like it. It was like, huh? But it's mostly because it was brand new and it just didn't look right. But it is now, the strange thing is the whole industry is kind of flipped to, most shows are kind of emulating anime in a certain way. It affected everything.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
And they're stunning. So many of the new anime now is stunning. It is nothing like Dragon Ball Z and Ranma when we were working on those things, where exactly I was like, what is this? It was very odd, and the dialogue was odd, and of course the fighting was very strange with Dragon, because there was nothing like this on television, and that's why I think people, kind of found it. It was like, what is this? And parents were like, why is there so much screaming on Saturday morning? It's just like, like that did not happen on Saturday morning television. It wasn't happening. And it's very different from what we were used to doing.
And since you brought up the early 90s, probably one of the first anime, really anythings that I sourced out and watched was a movie called Akira, or Akira, if you prefer. Yeah. So I saw that early 90s, and it blew my ever-loving mind. I didn't know that cartoons could look like that. And that was really eye-opening for me. And then shortly thereafter was when I got the call to work on Ranma. And that kind of, again, introduced me to a lot more anime projects. And you're exactly correct that there's been a wave of influence and appreciation and just, inspiration for sure from these anime series that has found its way into Hollywood. And I even noticed that with X-Men Evolution, where the animation style for that series was different than any other superhero series that I'd seen. And Stephen E. Gordon is the guy that designed the characters for that show, but it did feel like there was an influence from some of these other series, which at that time was still relatively new, and now you see it everywhere. And there's
anime even influenced The Simpsons this past year.
That's right.
I'm sure everybody saw the Treehouse of Terror episode. That was a Death Note episode. Very cool.
And I think you have to understand too, as actors, when dubbing is harder. Dubbing is harder to do. You're watching a screen, you're looking at your script, and you're trying to match the flaps. And it's a little tougher to get your own personality. When we're doing pre-lay animation, they dub to our voice, or they draw to our voices, sorry. And I think we all agree, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but when I'm developing a character, it's just so much easier for me to put more personality into, because I can take those moments and but dubbing, you can't. You might be able to get a in, was a big thing, and that's about it. So you can't often conjure as much personality, does that make sense, as you can when you're really creating the character yourself. So it's technically tougher to do.
It's like two completely different forms of the same, we're acting, but dubbing has a layer of technicality to it that when you can when you do it well, like it's a real triumph. But it is, yeah, it's nice to be able to create a character freely without the constraints of, strict timings and stuff. But it's like two sides of a coin, kind of.
It's like video games. It's the same thing. You're not in there with a group of people. You're in there by yourself in the booth. The director's on the other side, and I call it acting 101 because it's basically you're frightened here. So then it's whatever you have to produce. But it's a tougher one to do.
And it's okay that anime dubbing is much tougher because it also pays much less. So than relay series and stuff.
Oxymoron.
Yeah.
But one benefit that you have from working on dubbing projects is you have these amazing visuals to really kind of guide your performance and just give you inspiration as you go. Like you're doing a fight scene in a prelay series and you're kind of imagining, okay, I'm doing a roll and a kick and a punch and whatever. If you're working on an anime series, you get to see it all. And then you're like, okay, well, that's a real kick to the gut. Okay, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, that's true. It actually
Good
helps
question.
you in that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for David Kaye and James Dean Quartet. Out of your characters in Dragon Ball and in Beast Wars, if they were to meet up, who do you think would win the fight between Raccoon and Megatron and Cheetor and Goku?
Oh, jeez.
Who would win?
Who would win the fight?
Well, first of all, you're fighting yourself.
Yeah.
Fighting myself.
You're not
I
fighting
fight
me.
myself all the time.
And you never win.
I never win.
There's never a winner.
I never win. Yeah.
Ooh.
No, Megatron, because Rikum is, I just want to smash things, but that basically is hard, or what is it, or I don't know, what's his name, with the one eye in his head. I forget. I'm digressing. It's a character I forgot I played.
Oh, I've never done that.
No, I think Megatron, because he's cerebral. Very cerebral. Yeah. He'd think his way through it, and this guy just, try and smash him, and then Megatron to kind of...
Genius against an idiot.
Bonk.
I think, yeah.
Bonk. Yeah. Because he was in rough shape after the big battle, wasn't he, Rikum?
Yeah, well, he's
It was,
not the brightest.
not the brightest, yeah. So,
Over to you, Mr. Corlett.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I would hope if I had anything to do with it, they would just sit down and talk things out.
Oh.
Boring. I know. I'm sorry.
Goku really rip apart that tiny, cute little kitten? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Why would they be fighting? Let's get deeper into this.
why aren't they
reasoning.
fighting?
What are they
no
fighting
philosophical
about?
questions.
Was there any time during any of your guys' careers where you had to take a break from voice acting?
Take a break from voice acting?
Yeah.
Nah, man, I got bills to pay. No,
Yeah.
when I did, I had to take a break from.
Self-imposed?
Yeah, I had to take a break from voice acting. The one time in my life was because of Vegeta on Dragon Ball Z. I lost my voice, and when we were allowed to do 8-hour sessions with Barry Watson when we were first doing the show, I had an 8-hour Dragon Ball Z session, and I remember it clearly because I had a dinner booked with my wife and I think our in-laws that same night, and I had to write things on paper to talk. Like my order, I was like, "What are you getting, Brian?" I'm like, "It was nothing there. It was completely gone."
Yeah.
That was a break probably for at least a week to let it come back. That's what Dragon Ball does to you.
But no one will do it like on purpose. I mean, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but who wouldn't want to just voice act all the time?
Yeah, that's cool.
I take breaks all the time when I don't get cast in something. Yeah, that's not by choice. I'm like, oh, fine, okay, I guess I'm taking another break.
I'm on a break.
Yeah.
We didn't want to stop because I remember before we were doing Ben 10 and it showed up at Cartoon Network. It's like, okay, it says, okay, levels, David Kaye's here, Grandpa Max. And I'm like, well, Ben, I gotta go home. What? Go home. What do you mean go home? You don't sound right. Go home. And I go, oh, right, I can go home. I didn't think I had permission to go home. So I go, really? Oh, yeah, we'll pick you up when you're better. And I went, oh, that was when there were just colds, and now everybody's freaked out. But yeah, we'll
That's
go
how you
in.
get the day off on a voice gig.
There's only
now.
way to get the day off, just go home.
Go home, get out.
Yeah.
Well, and I was a singer at the same time, so to scream like that for that long period of time in a high register, well, any register would hurt, but then I'd have to go sing a gig till 2 a.m, and then I'd have to go in the studio the next morning and do a cute little voice or sing something on like My Little Pony or something, and you just couldn't do it. Your voice is an instrument, and it can get worn out. So we're happy that they've shortened the sessions to 4 hours for dubbing, and especially when it's a difficult voice. And the directors and everybody and producers are much more cognizant that you can't blow an actor's voice out. So often they'll even leave the yelling for the end of the session now instead of doing it throughout, which really helps us save our voices, because even the best and the strongest voices, they do get sore, and then you can't do your job. Or if you get
Truthfully,
sick.
though, none of us want to take a break because we love doing it. We get to do cartoons. Speak for
Thank you, guys.
So good to see you all.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
great and the great questions.
Thank you, everyone.
guys.